Hello, friends. Welcome to After Dark Radio with Weezy. If you have been following me for a while, you know that I've talked about the Newburgh Conspiracy for quite some time. I had been thinking about doing a show on this particular subject and never really got to it. So tonight, it is on the menu. Our story takes place back in 1783. And we're going to ask some questions that the official record has never fully answered. Questions that, when you line them up side by side, stop looking like coincidences. Let's start with the official narrative, shall we? The one that made it into the history books. And I'm gonna give it to you straight up because you need to understand the official story before you can understand why it doesn't quite hold together. By the winter of 1783, the Continental Army was furious. These officers had given years of their lives, years of cold, starvation, disease, and blood. They had been promised back pay, promised pensions, and Congress repeatedly broke and constitutionally incapable of raising direct taxes, kept stalling, kept making excuses, kept asking the men who'd won the war to just wait a little bit longer. And so they waited. They were chilling at Newburgh, New York, with nothing to do but think about how badly they'd been treated and used. Then the letters appeared. Anonymous, eloquent, incendiary. Some people throw the name of Alexander Hamilton, cough, cough. These letters were circulating through the camp like a fever. The letters told the officers that patience was for fools, that Congress would never pay willingly, that the Army needed to make clear in terms that could not be ignored that there would be consequences for betrayal. A meeting was called. Tensions were at a breaking point. And then, of course, George Washington walks in, unannounced, uninvited. He took the floor and delivered a speech urging restraint, appealing to honor, to legacy, and then, fumbling to read a letter, he reached for his glasses, something his men had never seen him wear in public, and he said quietly, allegedly, "Gentlemen, you must pardon me. I have grown gray in your service, and now find myself growing blind." We're told that the room broke, officers wept, the movement dissolved, and Washington saved the Republic with a pair of glasses and a well-timed show of vulnerability. Isn't that a lovely story? Now let's talk about what that story leaves out. The letters. Let's start there. Because anonymous documents don't write themselves. And in a military camp full of people watching each other, someone always knows. Historians have long fingered Major John Armstrong Jr. as the author. Armstrong was an aide to General Horatio Gates, a man who had his own deep grievances with Washington and his own ambitions. Armstrong was young, sharp, politically wired, and burning with resentment on behalf of the officer corps. He had the skill to write those letters, he had the motive, and he had access. Here's what's interesting. Armstrong was never published, not charged, not formally reprimanded, not even seriously questioned in any record that survived. He went on to become a U.S. Senator, a diplomat, Secretary of War under James Madison, a man who almost helped bring down the American Republic, rewarded with a long, distinguished career in government. You want to know what that tells me? It tells me somebody powerful had his back. That is not how you treat a rogue operative who embarrassed a new nation. That is how you treat someone who was running an operation that, when the moment passed, needed to be quietly folded away. Someone whose silence was worth protecting. And here, my friends, is where it truly gets interesting. Robert Morris, Gouverneur Morris, two of the most powerful financial and political operators of the Revolutionary era. Men who controlled the money, controlled the debt, and had enormous personal stakes in forcing Congress to adopt a stronger national financial framework. And here is what the quote-unquote scholarly record shows. In the months leading up to Newburgh, these men were in active communication with figures close to the discontented officer corps. They were well aware of the brewing anger in the camp. They had every political incentive to let that anger boil over, just enough to frighten Congress into action. Not a full coup, not a revolution against their own revolution. Something a little subtler, a demonstration, a pressure campaign, disguised as a spontaneous outburst of military grievance. Think about what that would look like from the outside. Angry officers, circulating anonymous letters, threatening collective action. Congress, terrified, finally agreeing to a deal with the debt and taxation issues these financial men had been pushing for years. The perfect pressure campaign. And nobody left holding the bag because the letters were anonymous. The encouragement was verbal and unrecorded, and Washington rode in to play the hero before anything actually happened. Conspiracies rarely announce themselves. They don't send invitations. They operate through whispers, through suggestions, through layers of plausible deniability, stacked so carefully that even 240 years later, you can't even quite pin it down. But sometimes if you look long enough, you can see the shape of it. even when the details have been scrubbed clean. I want to step back for a moment and show you a particular pattern, because Newburgh didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened at the exact intersection of two forces that have ignited political crisis throughout all of recorded history. Force 1. A government that can't or won't pay its soldiers. Force 2. Political elites who see that unpaid, angry army as a tool. Ancient Rome watched this cycle play out for centuries. Generals and financiers used unpaid legions as leverage. Republics became dictatorships not because the soldiers wanted power, but because the men behind the soldiers did, and the soldiers were the only lever powerful enough to move the machine. The English Civil War, the French Revolution's violent aftermath, the collapse of the Weimar Republic. Pick your century, pick your continent. The story rhymes. In every case, the men with the guns weren't the masterminds. The masterminds were the men in the back rooms. The ones with financial interests, the political ambitions, the long game. The soldiers were the instrument. And the truly frightening thing about Newburgh is that this same dynamic, power hiding behind the grievance, was present in the very founding moment of American democracy, at the very birth of the thing. Now, I want to be straight up with you the way I am on the show. I'm gonna do a little speculation, give my own little analysis, because there are questions, pointed questions, built on the quote-unquote historical record, but questions nonetheless. So just hear me out. You can come to your own conclusions. Question 1. Was the Newburgh movement truly spontaneous? Or was it seeded, cultivated, and pointed at Congress by men who needed a crisis to get what they wanted, and who had the connections to make it happen quietly? Question 2. Was Armstrong's authorship of the letters really a secret? Or was it an open secret, the kind of thing that powerful men knew and agreed by mutual understanding, never to formally acknowledge? Question 3. Did George Washington know more than he let on? He arrived at the meeting unannounced, with theatrical precision, at exactly the right moment. Was that instinct? Or was Washington operating with information that told him exactly how far the situation had been allowed to go, and exactly when he needed to heroically step in? Was he really stopping a coup? Or was he the final necessary piece of a controlled operation? The one player everyone trusted to close the door without anyone getting hurt? Question 4. The one that bothers me a wee bit. The records we have of Newburgh were written by the people who survived it. Men who knew they were making history. Men who had spent their entire careers managing how they would be remembered. How much of what we call the historical record is actually the story they chose to leave behind? How much happened in rooms where no one was taking notes? Because everyone in the room understood that no notes should ever be taken. One thing I have learned, and I mean really learned after years of digging through documents that were never meant to be read by people like us, is that the official stories survive not because they are true, but because they're useful. The Newburgh story is useful. It gives us a villain, congressional neglect. It gives us a hero, George Washington, Premier Mason. It gives us a near disaster with a clean resolution. It reassures us that the system worked, that the right man was there at the right place, at the right time, that American democracy survived on the strength of its founders' virtue. But here's what the story asks you to ignore. It asks you to ignore that the entire episode evaporated with suspicious neatness, leaving no one accountable and everyone's reputation intact. Conspiracies don't fail and leave a mess. They either succeed or they get quietly folded away. The loose ends tucked in and participants protected, and the story rewritten into something a little bit more palatable. We live in an era obsessed with government overreach, with civilian control of the military, with the question of whether our institutions are as strong as we believe them to be. We debate these things as though they're modern anxieties, as though they emerge from some failure of our own generation. They didn't. They were there at the very beginning, baked into the founding, present at birth. And the most important turning points in history are almost never the ones that made it into the chapter heading. They're the ones buried in the footnotes. The ones that nearly happened. The ones that were stopped or managed just in time. I suppose perhaps the Newburgh Conspiracy was just like the history textbooks say. I guess just a grievance moment, a near miss, a great man in the right place at the right time. But maybe it was something else. Maybe it was an operation run by the financial elites who needed Congress scared, staffed by ambitious men who wrote anonymous letters and were then quietly protected, made heroes after the fact, and closed out by the one man in America whose personal authority was large enough to shut it all down with a single gesture. Maybe the Republic wasn't saved by virtue. Maybe it was saved because the men running the operation decided it had gone far enough and called it off. Maybe something a little different altogether. We will probably never know for certain. The man who could have told us made sure of that. This much is not speculation. In the spring of 1783, the United States of America, only 8 years old at the time, constitutionless, broke, and defended by an army that had every reason to be furious, came within a hair's breadth of becoming something else entirely. And the men most responsible for that danger walked away without a single scratch. A little like Lewis Payne Powell in that infamous, alleged Seward attack. Ask yourself why. This has been After Dark Radio with Weezy. Sleep well, my friends, and remember, question everything.